We talked about Pakistan's relations with the United States and USSR. Now we'll talk about Pakistan's relations with China. Interestingly, the People's Republic of China was established in 1949, 2 years after Pakistan's creation. And no ideological constraint ever came in the way in the relations with Pakistan and China, as it has with the problems were with the communist Russia. Pakistan was one of the first countries to recognize China. Diplomatic relations had been established by 1951. And the Pakistani leadership had a very unhappy exchange with Chiang Kai-shek and was more receptive to regime headed by Mao Zedong. Let me add a footnote here. The Chiang Kai-shek was the one who became the leader of Taiwan later. So the Pakistani Prime Minister was Muhammad Ali Bogra, and he was able to strike a rapport with the Chinese Premier Zhou Enlai during the Bandung Conference in 1955. So Pakistan in March 1957 paid a return visit to China after in 1956 Zhou Enlai visited Pakistan. China was diplomatically mature, and much of the damage has been contained by China's diplomatic maturity. But an episode occurred which had greater potential for misgiving at the start of the Sino-Indian, Chinese-Indian conflict in 1959. President Ayub most injudiciously offered India joint defense against China, which the Indian Prime Minister refused. I think at this stage the Foreign Minister Muhammad Ali Bogra, who as Prime Minister had established first contact with China, was able to nullify Ayub's indiscretion and cement ties with China. Then in 1963, Sino-Pakistan border was demarcated and later agreement on trade, and much more significantly, direct air communications were signed. So it was a good beginning, and it was taking a good start. In the 1965 war, when Pakistan had a sizable arsenal, it did not seize the offer of Chinese help. And in 1971, when Pakistan had a depleted arsenal, China fell short of promising armed intervention. And we see that in the face of these arsenals shortage, since China was not in contact with US, Russia did not raise the stakes as it did in 1971 and 65. It did not. Pakistan actively supported China's bid to regain its seat in the UN and opposed the American two China's formula. It voted for the draft resolution which seated China in the United Nations Security Council and expelled Taiwan from the UN. Bhutto regarded Chinese-American relations as an important factor in consolidating Pakistan's position in Asia, and he visited China in 1972, May 1974, and then in May 1976. And China became one of the main suppliers of arms to Pakistan. This continued despite the death of Zhou Enlai and Mao Zedong in 1976 and the execution of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto in 1979. During the 1980-90, relations between China and Pakistan remained stable and friendly. In November 1985, Li Peng, head of the Chinese government, visited Pakistan when China promised to help Pakistan in the development of nuclear energy. I had thought that it will take a little time, but I think we need a little more details in this lecture. So this part 2 is still continuing. Pakistan's pro-Taliban policy cast its shadow over its relations with China because they were tilting towards United States of America. So, on a more serious note, China expelled 700 Pakistani traders from Xinjiang, albeit under a 1985 agreement. Both China and Pakistan have decried US sanctions on them for alleged transfer of nuclear technology. These then followed the Pakistani projects have been undertaken with Chinese help and are still continuing. The Karakoram Highway, the heavy mechanical complex at Texla, the heavy electrical complex at Kot Najibullah, the thermal power station at Guddu, Spark, an agriculture cooperation program, and the Sendak metallurgy project. So all heavy mechanical projects are signed with China. The relation between China and Pakistan have continued to grow despite changes in the imperatives. And the joyous day came when two JF-17s were welcomed at Kamra on 12th March 2007, and Prime Minister Shaukat Aziz in April 2007. He said in Chengdu that Pakistan would recover its investment by selling the aircraft. So the major crisis was averted in June 2007 when the government secured the release of 9 Chinese nationals abducted by the Lal Masjid Brigade. One of the greatest pressure tactics of terrorists is to abduct or kill Chinese national in Pakistan to lay bare the country's most secure base of integrity. But think of China. They gave a $327 million loan for the next phase of the Karakoram Highway. Now let's talk a little about the Pakistan relationship with the Britain. Pakistan was created when it gained independence from Britain. The last viceroy was Lord Mountbatten, who gave a brief to partition, Indian only if unavoidable. Even before Lord Mountbatten arrived, it was decided to concede a Pakistan in which Punjab and Bengal and Muslim majority provinces were to be divided. Thus, all the disadvantages with which Pakistan was born was due to British manipulations. The Labour Party's commitment to the Indian National Congress was so firm that it was a wonder that partition was at all conceded. Pakistan came into existence as a dominion of the British Commonwealth, and even when it became a republic in 1956, it retained a membership of the Commonwealth. And in the 1956 invasion of Egypt, Pakistan angered its population by siding with Britain and France against Egypt. And when the 1971 war broke out, Harold Wilson was still Prime Minister and led the charade against Pakistan. When a deputation of British parliamentarians under Mrs. Jill Knight gave a favourable report on Pakistan, he dispatched another delegation under Arthur Bottomley to obtain a second adverse report. This is how politics works, you see. In October 1989, Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto restored Pakistan's membership of Commonwealth. It was her father, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who has pulled Pakistan out of Commonwealth. Anglo-Pakistan relations came under mild strain as a result of Pakistan's nuclear test and severe strain during the 1909 Kargil crisis. The British Prime Minister Tony Blair visited Pakistan and on November 2007 signed an accord with President Musharraf and Prime Minister Shaukat Aziz to strengthen cooperation to fight terrorism, drug trafficking, illegal immigration, and transnational organized crime. In the honors list issued on Her Majesty's birthday, knighthood was awarded to Salman Rushdie, author of the blasphemous satanic verses, in 1988. Previously, a knighthood had been awarded to V.C. Naipaul, author of Among the Believers, An Islamic Journey, a book which is unsympathetic to Muslims. The Foreign Secretary said that the reason of the award was self-evident. It was hardly that since an internationally celebrated author, Colin Wilson, was consistently passed over. When the Beatles were awarded the OBE in 1962, a number of recipients returned their awards. So soon after the cartoon fiasco, why the sentiments of Muslims had to be injured is not self-evident. So while hopes for better relations had been raised in November 2006, in 2007 they were dashed. So, Khuda Hafiz.